Boom, we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Life is a Chad YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for being here wherever you may be. And of course, however you may be listening. So recently, due to me being very much interested in historical dramas, historical accounts, just history in general, especially when it comes to the monarchy. I've always been that way. Even more so now that I my faith has come full circle from very much Protestant, more or less because I didn't know any better, to now making my way to Eastern Orthodoxy, where I am fully a member of that faith. And it's very interesting to me to now, obviously, Eastern Orthodoxy is not Catholic. I've heard it described that Eastern Orthodoxy is somewhere in between Catholicism and Protestantism. There's probably no, not probably. There is more to it than that. There's obviously doctrinal differences, and of course, in Eastern Orthodoxy, we do not believe in papal supremacy, but we do believe in apostolic succession and things of that nature. But and idols, I think we see idols in a slightly different way. But we do believe in the lighting of candles and praying in that way, and it being very important to pray, especially for those who have passed away and things like that. But, anyways, suffice it to say, has always been very interesting to me and is very interesting to me. And recently, I circled back to a show that I saw when I was in high school, saw a few years ago a little bit, and recently started watching it again. And that show is called The Tudors. And The Tudors is a Showtime show about King Henry VIII, really towards the tail end of his marriage with Catherine of Aragon within Spain. She was from Spain. And now that I have made my journey, especially through the red pill space, and gone through this profound, well, maybe not profound, but have become more solidified in my stances and beliefs of interpersonal dynamics, which I believe are very much biblically ordained as well. Okay, it's not just a full blown red pill, Rollo Tomasi, Andrew Tate ideology. I think a lot of those principles have been principles since the dawn of time and have been written about within Christianity, and we see it in scripture as well. And if you guys are not aware, just a little backstory on King Henry VIII. By the way, this is not going to be a full-blown review of the Tudors TV show or anything like that. Suffice that to say that I would say that TV show is about 20 to 30% accurate. They do draw upon legitimate quotes and lines and writings of various members of that time, including King Henry VIII and his various love interests and things like of that nature. But the timeline gets finangled and mixed and matched. And really, me watching the show has, because I do this with any history period drama, and maybe you're the same. When I watch it, especially if there's something that is compelling that happens, or there's a character that's very interesting, I immediately hit the Goog, and or whatever search engine. Um, Not a big favor of Google, by the way, but some of the other search engines suck. But and research how accurate it is. What is the truth behind this individual? What were they like in real life? And me saying that it's like 20 to 30% accurate is not necessarily a critique. I do believe that shows that draw on real life events, or from, if it's a remake of an original work or something like that, they should try to be as close and faithful to the source material, the actuality of what is going on, the events, as possible. But the acting in the show is really good, and it's just interesting to see a world like that. I very much like sci-fi and fantasy, and like I said, history. So if you guys want to check it out, check it out. It is definitely a lewd show. I fast forward through all of the um, not Christian scenes, if you will. Uh, not that the not that all of the scenes didn't happen within marriage, but from our perspective, it us not being, within that marriage, and obviously them being dead, it's not the most Christian thing to do to watch those scenes. But so, forewarning, if you do end up watching that show and checking it out, I watched it on Amazon Prime, but the original maker was Showtime. It definitely does have risque um, lewdness and scenes of that nature. It's very much a classic HBO Skinamax Showtime show. Okay, but if you guys aren't aware, King Henry VIII was not supposed to be king. His brother Arthur, I believe, or Harry, whatever the fuck his brother's name is, it's either Arthur or Harry was his name, was supposed to be king. And the King Henry VIII's brother was betrothed and even spent close to a year's time with King Henry VIII's brother in marriage. And of course, he would end up dying when he was king. So he was only king for a year. And the alliance at the time between Spain and England was of utmost importance. They were two of the greatest powers on earth at that time, if not the greatest powers. Uh, England was very much in a situation where King Henry VIII's father was a warrior king who was the last king to earn his kingship on the battlefield and basically take the kingship for his own. He was the last king to do so. The other ways of becoming king is just through the normal line of succession. So these are his two brothers. I was right. It was Arthur, Prince of Wales. And like I said, he was supposed to be king for a long time. There's a lot of hopes for him. And of course, he ended up dying. And as you guys can see here, his spouse was Catherine of Aragon. And Spain, they were exploring the New World, and was a massive superpower on the world stage. And for King Henry VIII's father, it was of utmost importance to have that relationship created between those two powers. And it was very important to Spain, specifically, to have that occur as well. It worked for both parties. For England, they had a new king whose kingship hanged in the balance. He needed to have two sons, or he needed to have sons. He did indeed have sons. He had an heir and a spare, as they call it. Arthur was the heir, and the spare was King Henry VIII. And with his kingship in the balance, and detractors of his kingship still very much present, back then, one of the ways that you could cement and really have your kingship take hold, take root, is by marrying your kids to other great noble homes, so that you could call upon them to war or arms if need be. You'd, of course, be given a dowry if they married off one of their daughters to one of your sons. So there was a lot of advantages to this, and Spain really wanted to cement their power as well. And what better way than to have their daughter marry the prince of one of the other top superpowers vis-a-vis England. So anyways, Arthur dies and King Henry VIII becomes king. They somehow, it's portrayed differently in various works. There was a new show that came out. I think it was something, the Warrior Queen, or whatever the fuck it's called. It has the girl from um uh shoot, let me see if I can. The Spanish Princess is what it's called. The Spanish Princess. Um and the main character, she played a very vicious character in Game of Thrones, one of Ramsay's mistresses. And somehow it was finagled, and she received a dispensation from the Pope to marry King Henry VIII, or what he would later be called King Henry VIII. In order to do so, what was required is her to prove that the marriage was never consummated, that they never had sex, which, looking back on it, I wouldn't say is totally impossible, but it's highly improbable, because if you know anything about that time period, especially with the higher echelon of nobility, it was to the point. So, with the higher echelon of nobility, succession and having heirs was very important, and a symbol of that was a consummated marriage. That is how you knew that the joining of the two houses was complete, by them having sex with one another, and the marriage being cemented. And this would be done on the wedding night, almost guaranteed, unless, for various reasons it didn't happen, but it would be done on the wedding night with people watching, because this is not modern times where people can get to and from in the blink of an eye with cars and airplanes. People who came to these weddings traveled great distances to be where they were at, to be a part of these weddings. And if you wanted to have your new marriage proceed in the best light possible, you needed to have people witness the marriage taking off on the right step, on a good step. And part of that was seeing the marriage consummated. So them not doing that, I think, is highly unlikely. If you ask me, I think it's highly unlikely. I would give it like a 80% chance of not being true, that they did in fact have sex. But I digress. They got a dispensation. The Pope gave them a dispensation, and King Henry and Catherine of Aragon were married for close to 20 years before King Henry VIII had met this woman named Anne Boleyn. And so I'm watching this show, and I'm just like, and so just to finish the story, King Henry VIII is primarily known for two things. One, leaving papal authority and establishing the Church of England, and two, having 6 wives. But the leaving of Catholicism and leaving papal authority was on the shoulders and on the back of King Henry's simpishness to Anne Boleyn. Had King Henry VIII not been such a simp to Anne Boleyn, it would have never have fucking happened. Now, at the time, yes, there was a pretty, I would say, decently strong Protestant or desire of Reformation. You know, you had Lutheran, and especially in countries like Germany and Netherlands, Protestantism was definitely becoming more and more popular. But if you read any honest source, England was very much Catholic and very much happy to be Catholic. The citizens were very happy with the Catholicism of the time, and that is why King Henry VIII's whole actions with Anne Boleyn ended up being such a pivotal point in history, and much to the chagrin of all of his citizens, because they very much were Catholic. They loved and liked Catherine of Aragon, who was Catholic. She was Spanish. They adored her. Okay. So one would not have happened without the other. The Church of England, which I believe, if you look it up, they are Anglican, which really, if you want to know anything about Anglican, how do you fucking say it? Anglicanism, say that 10 times fast, then you would know that essentially the Church of England, which they do call themselves a sect of Protestantism, is essentially Catholicism with slight reform, but really what it is Catholicism without the Pope. So essentially, it's Eastern Orthodoxy. Okay. Now, obviously, if you get down to the nitty gritty, I'm sure there is a massive difference, or I'm not doing it justice in the true difference in doctrine. But Anglicanism and the Church of England did very much keep a lot of the procedural practices of Catholicism. You know, with the lighting of candles, with bishops, and all of that goods, idols and things like that. Okay. But Anne Boleyn was very much a reformer, Protestant. And, you know, if I just want it to be known that if you are under the impression that this was like a change led by the people, and England was lust for change and a breakaway from Catholicism, you are dead wrong. Matter of fact, after King Henry VIII's divorce from Anne Boleyn, there was, and when he was married to Jane Seymour, there was uh, a revolt that took place. It was called the Great Pilgrimage, and it was led by basically Catholics in northern England who were not happy with Oliver Cromwell, or not Oliver Cromwell. Well, his last name is Cromwell, Sir Cromwell, whatever the fuck his first name is. They were not happy with how the king's hand and all of his minions, so to speak, were raping and pillaging their churches and totally tearing them down, taking all their resources and valuables and giving them back to the king, who basically had cemented himself as not only a ruler over people's bodies, but now ruler over their soul as well, being head of both the state and the church. So people were in England were very much in support of Catholicism and the Pope and all of that good stuff. Okay. If this had not happened, in fact, there was an article that I read from the Independent that basically, because when I was watching the show, I was like, what would have happened if King Henry VIII did not marry Anne Boleyn? What would England look like today? And essentially, it would still be a Catholic country. Now, who knows? Maybe, 200 years later, they wouldn't have been able to hold off Protestantism, and maybe it would have just happened later and not as soon. But honestly, based off of what I have read, I think that if it didn't happen, England would still very much be Catholic. The other thing that I want to say before I talk about King Henry's simpishness is that had it not happened, okay, um, the monarchy in England, I think still would, it probably would not be going today, but it would have lasted far longer with the power that it had. Essentially, King Henry VIII, within his actions, allowed for the dismantling of the monarchy because what people don't realize is that the very power that was given to kings and the whole idea of kingship through a monarchical system was that God bestowed the power to it was what is it called the divine ruler or the divineship of rulers. So it was actually called the divine right of kings. So this is what it says here. Divine right of kings in European history, a political doctrine in defense of monarchical absolutism, which asserted that kings derived their authority from God and could not therefore be held accountable for their actions by any earthly authority such as parliament. So what I'm getting at is that it was one and the same. The power that the Pope had, being God's representative on earth, was shared with kings and the monarchy. And that very same power that they had and the citizens believing in that power was the very same belief that allowed kings to have power. But when King Henry broke off from the Pope and from Catholicism, event essentially he laid the seeds and the foundation for skepticism of divine right of kings, and that kings were uh God's chosen ruler for that country. He laid the foundation for that. He laid the seeds for that question to be presented. So, in the end, I don't think the monarchy would still exist today in absolute power as it had in the past, but I do think they would have held on to it for a good period longer than what they had done. Had King Henry VIII not done what he did. So suffice it to say, guys, King Henry VIII is a pivotal person in history for both good and bad people. He's a very polarizing figure. To me, I see most of the things he did as bad and basically a mistake. That's why I call myself a revisionist. I think that much of the last, definitely the last couple hundred years, but even going back, to the 1500s was a mistake. And a lot of poor decisions were indeed made. Now, a lot of Protestants are definitely in favor of King Henry VIII because it allowed for them to hold power and take power and dissolve the monarchy. That's the thing, is that, the very people that King Henry gave power to were people who down the line were going to be the same people that dissolved the kingship and the monarchy, the very same people who gave him the power that he had. So I would even go as far to say that the people during his time, the Protestants during his time and the reformers during his time, thought the same thing and wanted the same thing. There's a lot of historical accounts that show as much. So, very, very interesting history and time. The Renaissance period, if you look at the Borgias, if you look at what was going on in Italy, the art, the some of the philosoph oh my goodness, guys, the philosophical thinkers of the time, it was a magnificent time period. Now, as I said, being a revisionist, I do not agree with all the things that won out in the end, obviously, and took hold. But it was a very interesting time period. And you look at the course of human history in general, okay, there's always time periods that are the ultimate culmination and always seem like having had much more done in that time period than other time periods, because time is very cyclical. You have periods where there's not a lot going on and it's kind of just building, it's building, it's building, and then it culminates in a certain time period, and that's that. During King Henry's time, there was the whole idea of the Renaissance man, the guy, the man who was physically fit, and I very much myself believe in this idea and try to strive for it myself. I fall short, of course, but I think it's a good. Much more men need to ascribe themselves to this, and we would not be in the predicament now that we're in if they did. But they believed in being physically fit, being intelligent, being learned, thinking about things, being philosophers and philosophical, and being a complete man that knew a lot about a lot of different things and could do a lot of different things. So, anyways, this has gone really around and about, but I did think it was interesting to share all of that. To bring it to King Henry VIII was the biggest simp of all time. Now, of course, there's always massive simpistry and simpholdery that exists in the world, and it's not, it's that's never not going to be the case. Was King Henry VIII legitimately the biggest simp of all time? No. Okay, but he's definitely one of the most popular biggest simps in history. Okay, he just happened to be a simp in which everybody had their eyes on him. He was a public figure. He was a popular figure. Look at this, guys. Look at his 6 marriages. You guys can see this is his marriage to annulment from Catherine. And I pulled this up from, so I pulled this up and we're going to take a look at it from Reddit. This is a thread. King Henry VIII is literally the biggest simp in history. And then it says, the English people after King Henry VIII upturns the whole country and damages relations with the Pope so he can divorce and marry a second wife. Get a load of this simp. The internet is so great sometimes. So really, the thing that you need to know is, if you know anything about Anne Boleyn, the only reason why she was able to do what she was able to do is because essentially she wouldn't sleep with the king immediately. Now, I do think her doing that does show and is a good testament to women why virtue and making a man wait can work in your favor, and why not giving it away all the time immediately is in your best interest. But she was absolutely a political opportunist. Her father was one of the most political opportune men in the history that we have seen. I mean, he absolutely whored his daughters out, they both in France and in England. And a way that she was able to keep his interest was not to allow him to sleep with her off the bat. There was letters that were exchanged where he was basically begging to be able to fuck her and sleep with her. There was one thing I remember reading where it said King Henry VIII said that he would love to rest his head on her breasts or some shit like that, which all well and good. I mean, what fella doesn't want to do that? But that was really why everything happened the way it did, is because she would not have sex with him. And this dude fucking ended up forbidding any mistresses or uh he literally became what do you call it? He would not have sex when he was pursuing her, and this was over the span of a few years. Okay, this wasn't just a year or a couple of months. This was over the span of a few years. He became abstinent. Okay, he abstained from sex. Okay, this is the King of England, one of the most powerful men in the world, chose to do this because I don't know if it was more a show of interest to her as much as it was a tool for him to show the papacy, hey, look, I'm legitimately interested in her for the right reasons, and I'm not going to have sex with any other women, and this is real. This isn't just me lusting. If it was just me lusting, then I would be having sex with other women, because at the time the normal people, the logical people, were like, well, fuck, dude, if you need to get your nuts so badly, just get it with some of these other women, and so this lust will wear off. And that's why he ended up abstaining, because he knew that that's what was being used against him. And so he has to go down as one of the biggest simps in history, not only with Anne, okay, who he did not need to do everything he needed to do. She wasn't even that special. She just happened to not give it away to him right away, and he became enamored with it for whatever reason. Well, because he's a simp, and that's what simps do. And by the way, he gave so many gifts to her. I remember reading that he like immediately gave their before he had even gotten his dick wet, he literally gave her like bequeathed her like a whole thing of land that had been confiscated from somebody. It's crazy. I mean, the amount of gifts. You think that relationships are transactional now? You should have seen how a relation or how transactional relationships were back then, especially in nobility. And then this dude, so he ends up having her beheaded because she couldn't bear him a son, and the pressure culminated. Whether she cheated on him or not, those were the accusations levied against her, was that she cheated on him, committed incest with her brother, and had multiple other partners besides him. It made him look like a big pussy, honestly, and a big fucking cuckold. And then after his third wife, Jane Seymour, he married this woman named Catherine Howard, and she legitimately did cheat on him. She legitimately had sex with other men. How many? Nobody knows, but two men definitely got put to death. One was said to have happened before she married King Henry VIII, and one happened after she married King Henry VIII. But historically speaking, most people are pretty confident that she did legitimately cheat on King Henry VIII. And I've even read, honestly, I would say that this is not the consensus, not that consensus matters per se, but the consensus with Anne Boleyn is that it was all fabricated so that King Henry could marry Jane Seymour, who he was infatuated with, and he literally did marry her like a couple of days after Anne Boleyn's execution. What a fucking simp! And but uh, but there are still other historical accounts that did say that it was legitimate, and uh historical accounts that say that she did not, Anne Boleyn did not cheat on Henry, are because they are biased from a Protestant tilt and reformer tilt that supported her. But yeah, King Henry VIII, biggest simp of all time, guys, has to go to him. Uh, and then you see the simps in the comment, fuck every post that used this word. It's true though. How can you kill several of your wives and be called a simp? Well, but that's the thing, is that he killed two of them for cuckoldery or purported cuckoldery. So yeah, that would still be in line with simpistry. He simped real hard for a second wife. He can't be a simp though. Also, that word is fucking annoying now. How did you see this? I posted it months ago and it died in news. So, anyways, I thought this would be interesting to talk about. Um, and you guys should definitely check it out yourself. I would start with some documentaries on King Henry VIII, but yeah, the guy definitely was a simp. Gave extravagant gifts to the women he was interested in. And it makes sense. You want to know why, guys? Because King Henry VIII was primarily raised by women. He lived in a house with his mom and with his two sisters. And it goes to show you why you need a masculine figure in your life, because if you don't, you're going to be doomed to simpistry, and that's why we see so much today, so much simping going on today. Anyways, guys, like, comment, share, subscribe. You guys know the drill. And last but not least, DBAP, don't be a puss will on facts or feelings, because your feelings matter. Love you, King. See you guys next time. Christ is King. Peace.